The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the final webinar on Disciple C.D.P with Elena Dramchini. All right, so we've got an exciting webinar planned for you. So let me turn it over to Elena here.
Thank you, BL. Welcome everybody for this last webinar, where we're going to discuss the last two instructions given by Master DK to C.D.P for the year 1940 prior to her death. Now, the first instruction for the period from January to August 1940 is found in DINA I, 526, and the second, relatively short instruction for the period from August 1940 until her death in November 1940. And this instruction is found in DINA I at page 527. So we start with the January 1940 instruction where DK starts to tell her these things. When he addressed her, "My brother, you have no particular glamour, for you live in a perfect sea of glamour. Hence the difficulty of your problem. For had you one major glamour, it would be, for one of your devotion and mental capacity, a relatively easy thing to break down, and so walk in the light. For you have surrounded yourself with a myriad glamours of no great importance, but in their aggregate, they tend to make you walk continuously in a fog. You have the capacity to walk constantly in the light." Now we have the natal chart on the screen, where we see in her natal chart strong emphasis in the water triangle, Cancer, Scorpio, Pisces influencing some of the major aspects or areas of her everyday life. The planet which rules water and thus linking this water triangle is Neptune, and reflect the DK's words, "sea of glamour." We know she was conditioned by the sixth ray on 3 levels: her personality, astral body, and the physical brain, which includes also the brain on a sixth ray. And as DK said, this constitutes a terrific combination of forces. She assumed the responsibility to handle these forces in order to break the sixth ray hold just a moment, something came on my screen which I need to get rid of. Sorry about that. So what I was saying, that she assumed the responsibility to handle these forces in order to break the sixth ray hold, which this type of energy had on her for the past 3 lives in sequence. But she failed to do that. and so she, her soul's purpose was not fulfilled. And she would need to deal with this six-ray force again in the next life, which would be the fifth life when she comes back to deal with these terrific forces of six-ray. Now, the six-ray brain was predominantly under the influence of her six-ray astral body, but was also making her astral buddhic and reflecting the sea of glamour of the astral plane and the fog of the astral plane, but also the sea of light of the buddhic plane. And reasserted the words of the mantra given to her by DK in DINA I 506, which I just read the first sentence of it, which reflects this what I just said. When it says, "Let the pure light of reason and understanding dispel the fogs in which I long have walked." So you see, we have even here in this one sentence, we have the astral energy, the fogs of the astral plane, but the keywords of the Buddhi is the pure reason and pure understanding to dispel this astral glamour, and which she was under such a strong influence. Okay, and now we would put on the screen the chart for the 15th January 1940 quadra-wheel. Okay, which we see here the importance of represented by the Grand Cross, the importance of the 1940 year for this disciple, by the Grand Cross created by the transiting Saturn in 24 Aries, transiting nodes in 24 Aries Libra, the transiting Sun Earth in 24 Cancer Capricorn, and activating the progressed nodal axis in 24 Virgo Pisces. This, when we have such a powerful alignment, particularly through the nodal axis on all the levels here, it signifies a major process happening in that year from different levels of presentation and working, expressing these energies, okay? Which we will see how these energies are involved as we go through the months from the January to November. You know, her process prior to her death, okay? And now we will see on the screen the chart for the lunar eclipse on March 23, 1940. It was an eclipse which fell in 3 Libra 01. You see there on the screen, and it fell in the 4th house, which is one of the houses related to the process of death, because in that area we find the ending process, the ending of life process in this case, okay? Where the soul is leaving the physical body in which it anchored itself at birth, okay? So this is a very important eclipse. It activates Saturn-Neptune midpoint, which you don't see. It has to be calculated, but it is found in 3° Libra, 24 minutes. Also in the 4th house, okay, which indicate emotional depression, lack of vitality, and illness. Okay. Because the eclipse is bringing the moon and sun with it on this Saturn and Neptune midpoint, which is a very difficult combination of energies, okay? Now, if we look at the transit of the Mars Neptune in 24 Taurus Virgo making a trine to each other by transit, it activates a progressed Jupiter in 24 Scorpio in the 5th house, progressed Pluto in 24 Taurus. I am rounding these degrees out to make it simpler to see this. And the progressed nodal axis at 24 Virgo Pisces, and also solar arc Pluto in 24 Cancer. Okay, so this is again bringing one of the nodal axes here, which we mentioned already in the Grand Cross, plus coming now additional energies with it. Okay. So we have here, basically here the Mars, Neptune, Jupiter, Pluto energies coming together, okay? And we will come back to these energies as we go along. Now the progressed, what I usually do when I see this, for example, the transiting Mars-Neptune importance and activating so many energies in the chart, I try to find always the midpoint of the Mars-Neptune. In this case, I found the progressed Mars-Neptune midpoint because I was looking for it, which is found in 8° Gemini 09, which is in the 12th house. That midpoint will be found, which is again one of the houses implicated through illness and also through death process, okay? And this midpoint making a square to the progressed Saturn in 8° Pisces 04. So we have here Mars, Neptune, Mars, Saturn, Neptune triangle emerging with this connection, which we have included in this triangle Mars-Saturn energy, which is a primary energy of death, okay? It's a terminating, and it has many interpretations, but from the perspective of death, I call it the death point. And including the Neptune together, you see it shows the suffering and pain, and also glamour with the Mars-Neptune planet as a major transmitting planet of the 6th ray, and also conditioning of the astral plane, and also of the Buddhic plane. But here is the suffering and glamour also of inferiority and physical disability. Okay? So this is a very important combination of energies which emerged through the square of the midpoint Mars Neptune to the progressed Saturn. Okay? Now, solar arc Chiron, which is found in 27 Gemini in the 12th house, another emphasis on the 12th house, and is in what I call exact sesquiquadrate to the natal moon in 12 Scorpio 22, within 1 minute of arc. And the midpoint of the moon is Neptune Pluto, which is found at 12 degree Taurus 20. And we have the rulers of the Pisces here, Neptune Pluto, which are also the rulers of the Piscean decade of Scorpio, where is found the natal moon. Okay? Now, in the 12th house is the area of fear, imprisonment, and frustrations, which spring from the forces over which he had no control. Okay, because it's an area of hidden area, very subjective and very difficult to access. Okay. Sorry, if you heard some noise, it was the mobile ringing, which is a little bit away, but still hear it. So, the Scorpio Pisces energies reflect also the 8 and 12 houses, which are both involved through the process of death, okay? Because they are related to Scorpio, 8th house, Pisces, it's a 12th house, okay? Now, Chiron, as we know, is related to Virgo through its nurturing, purifying, and adjusting energies, okay? And Chiron, you see, is also in the 12th house by the solar arc there. And Virgo, esoteric ruler, is Neptune, okay? It is actually moon, but is waiting for this disciple Neptune. So thus Chiron and Neptune are implicated in the process of death also, because they are focusing the energy on the Virgo 4th house, which I already mentioned, that it is also implicated at death with its finalizing endings there. And Chiron and Neptune from the higher, like when I said esoteric ruler Neptune, it brings the soul energy together with the higher energy of Neptune. They are providing a healing energy in this process of transition, if she is able to utilize them, but DK was guiding her towards that. Focus into the soul and stand in these higher energies of the soul, okay? Now, Chiron is also related to Sagittarius through its directed, guiding ability to different realms or levels of life. So it becomes a very important energy for her to guide her from this life to the next. Okay? And Sagittarius, in this case, I only mentioned, is one of the ruling energies of her 6th house, which is related to health. It's intercepted in the 6th house, okay? So that's why the wound and healing polarity of the Chiron comes through this 6-12 axis of the houses, okay? Now, Chiron, as a wise man, because, you know, Chiron, as every planet, can be interpreted on many levels of its expression, was guiding CDP to the other side under the direction of her soul, which is indicated by Jupiter, her soul ruler, in Sagittarius in that 6th house. In a very powerful exoteric placement, it means going from the personality to the soul, where the Sagittarian house here is ruled by Aquarius, where Jupiter is the soul ruler. Okay? So we see here from the form, you know, from the form nature to the soul nature. And Chiron, as an esoteric bridge builder, is in this case aiding the crossing the space between this life and the next life. Okay? Now, following the instruction, these are the words following of Master DK when he says, your glamours come to you from 2 sources. Your reactions to all life's happenings and to your environment are those of a superficial fluidity. It is not basic or fundamental, for your life purpose is undeflectable. And in the brackets, he sort of questioned, is there such a word, my brother? And your life tendency is firmly and unchangeably oriented. But in dealing with circumstance and people, you are preoccupied with the effect this may have upon you and with your failure to handle them as should a disciple. Now we will put up the natal chart to look at some energies there. You see, her reactions of superficial fluidity are to all what happens in her life and in her environment. Okay? And it is usually the lower point of the solar plexus reactions of the personality, which is conditioned by the 6th ray Mars. Okay? Now Mars, as the dispositor of the Sun in Aries, which represents the personality, and of Mercury in Aries as ruler of Gemini, where we find the Venus there, it gives impulsive, restless mind on the lower level of that expression of Mercury in Aries. And as the dispositor of the Moon in Scorpio, okay? It brings through that placement of that Moon in Pisces decadent of Scorpio, the Moon Pisces fluidity. So it's adding to the Gemini, you know, primary fluidity, the Piscean, with the Moon, resulting in a constant change and preoccupation with the effects on her as a personality, and a failure, which is usually coming from Scorpio, to handle them as a soul. Now, this would require the utilization of the Antakarana from the lower to the higher mind, indicated by the esoteric placement now of the Mercury in Aries, which condition the highest mental abstract subplane where we find the higher mind, or abstract mind, and thus shifting the kama manas, the desire mind, to the son of mind or soul, indicated by the esoteric placement of Venus in Gemini. The higher level of that Gemini in Venus in Gemini, okay, the soul energy. But the superficial fluidity comes primarily from Gemini, conditioned by the kama manas, represented by the lower expression of that Venus in Gemini. And its conjunction with Mars, as you see there, the Mars increases the desire emotional energy automatically of the solar plexus. Okay? This is obviously also when we see the presentation of those quadra-wheels, a strong activity which is present by progression in Gemini, number of planets going through that area, and the 12th house, obviously. But as DK says, this superficial fluidity is not fundamental. It's not very important, because her life tendency and her life purpose is firmly oriented. It's unmovable, okay? And nothing can change it. And we see this firmness and stability by the ruling planets of the MCIC axis, Virgo Pisces, by Neptune and Pluto, which are the rulers of this axis, are both found in Taurus. Okay, the sign of firmness and stability. Okay. We even see that the IC, which is the foundation, is found in the Capricorn decanate of Virgo, which brings the Saturn, a strong, stabilizing influence in there. And the Virgo, ruling this IC foundation, is related to that Taurus, where those two rulers are, Neptune, Pluto. It's related to Taurus through Vulcan. It's a first ray here, adding the strength, further strength to it, which brings the endurance aspect of the will to be and persistence of Vulcan. Okay? And in DINA 1, 516, you will find a DK statement when he said to her, you have a persistence which is undaunted and which has guided you from your early days until now. This persistence is the hallmark of the pledged disciple, which she was. Now we continue with the instruction, and again DK's words to her. Your inferiority complex keeps you in a state of glamour and is purely a personality reaction. As a soul, you are strong in knowledge. As a soul, you love all beings. As a soul, there are no circumstances which you cannot handle. As a soul, you can dominate dynamically your environment. But the glamour of inferiority, which is the result of numerous little glamours, controls your life expression on the physical plane, plus the second glamour of physical disability. Upon that, I will not enlarge beyond pointing out the presentation, the preoccupation with the work you could do for us, carried down from the mental level of awareness. And in brackets, he's putting where you always truly live in spite of many excursions on the astral plane. So carried down from the mental level of awareness to the physical plane, where you would be released physically if she could do that. Okay? So here, you know, we see how highly advanced CDP was on the inner levels of the soul. Okay? But the problem to express it down on a physical plane was the issue here. And those of you who follow these webinars know that we have discussed many of her glamours, you know, through the webinars. But DK in this instruction is bringing focus primarily on two of them. The glamour of inferiority complex and the glamour of physical disability. Okay? She was basically allowing her physical body to dictate her, even though there was nothing wrong organically or any trouble or disease with her physical body. Okay? Her health problem was rooted primarily in her astral condition, under the influence of that powerful sixth ray force. Okay? Primarily by the sign Cancer, which is conditioning, in this case, the first house of the personality and of the physical body. Okay? Now, her moon being veiling Neptune for her as ruler of Cancer is placed in that Piscean decade of Scorpio, which we would be coming back to this moon because of its major importance in her life. And is under the influence of Mars and Neptune. Okay? The primary transmitters of the sixth ray, which was conditioning her physical body and the brain. But here we're looking at the physical body primarily in relation to that Cancer energy on the first house, which deals with the physical body. Okay? And Mars is the ruler of the physical body. And she is also being conditioned by Neptune ruling her physical body. Sixth ray. Okay? A very unusual, but very difficult placement to handle. Okay? So the first house influence is confirmed by the presence of number of transiting planets, also through Aries, which we will see, including the Mars, ruler of the physical body, and also the progressed Mars will be in Cancer in the first house. Okay? And also the transiting Chiron will be found when we see the quadra-wheel in Cancer through the first house, and activate the natal and solar arc Mars during the year. Okay? Now, when we come to the inferiority complex, it is again the reaction of the solar plexus, of its lower point, primarily, conditioned by the Mars and sixth ray, which is the ruler of her personality and the astral body. And now, but the primary energy, which is reflecting or indicating the inferiority complex is evidenced by the conjunction of Sun Chiron in Aries. You see there in the 11th house, Sun conjunct Chiron in Aries. This is the primary focus of that inferiority complex. Just one of its indication, okay? Now Mars, as the dispositor of this conjunction, which is in Aries, where Mars is the ruler, Mars is placed in the 12th house of prison, weakness, and fear, okay? And her negative thought forms of depression were holding her in this prison of doubt and mistrust, an indication also of fear of failure, primarily through Mars rulership of Scorpio, where we find the moon, natal moon, exactly in the degree of the fourth test of Scorpio dealing with fear, okay? And this was lowering her self-confidence, okay? Now, Sun-Neptune natal sextile, Saturn-Neptune sextile, was also behind the depression, based upon a sense incapacity to measure up to the realized spiritual opportunity, okay, which was presented to her, but she was not able to utilize it. And in September 1940, this progressed Neptune reached exact aspect to that natal Saturn, and was a major contributory factor, these energies, to her distress and weakness as she was approaching her death. Okay, because from September to November it was a short time span already. Okay. Now, during the year, the Sun-Chiron conjunction in Aries was activated by transiting Saturn, Chiron, and Neptune. All major energies which we already mentioned and which are being repeated through this very difficult year, the closer she was approaching her death. Okay? The natal Sun in Aries obviously brings the focus on the personality, together with which we would see the transiting Saturn through Aries, and the solar eclipse near the Aries Sun, which we're going to look at now. Okay, so on the screen you will see now the solar eclipse occurred on the 7th of April 1940 in 17 Aries 51 and made a close opposition to the solar arc Saturn in 17 Libra 41. It was also activating the Mars-Saturn midpoint in 17 Libra, okay, which is falling in the, all this, it's activating the fourth house there, okay, and also it was activating the natal Uranus in 16, the progressed Uranus in 16 Leo 59. You see, the major important points which actually were activated at the day and time of her death. Okay? So this is a very important eclipse, because, you know, it is actually initiating now the process towards that death. because the progress Uranus will activate that midpoint on the day of her death in November. And so this solar eclipse is really activating, okay? On the day of this eclipse, the transiting Saturn is found in 2° Taurus, conjunct the natal Neptune in Taurus. So we see we're coming back to these energies, the most difficult combination, Saturn-Neptune. Neptune is carrying a midpoint of Sun-Moon, which is falling in 1° Leo 43, which this solar eclipse is also activating. Okay? This combination of energies through that Saturn-Neptune contact. Okay? And this Sun-Moon midpoint is being approached also by the solar arc Mars in 1° Leo 15. Solar arc Mars in that second house. Okay? It is also related to her vitalization, a problem of vitality, because it's in the second house where we find the pranic energy, prana, okay? And forming an exact contact, you see, this solar arc Mars with this midpoint in 29 September 1940 is very close coming to her death, okay? Where the progressed Neptune in 4 Taurus and solar arc Neptune 4 Cancer would be in exact aspect to the natal Saturn in 4° Pisces, natally, okay? Now, this combination of Mars, Saturn, Neptune with the Sun-Moon indicates suffering, emotional depression, weakness, lack of vitality, and there is signaling that the process of withdrawal of the soul, which started in July 1939, you can go to that instruction where we dealt with it in a last webinar for 1939, which when the solar arc Uranus at that time made exact contact with the Mars-Saturn midpoint in 17 Libra, okay? And so this combination of energies with this eclipse bringing focal point on that midpoint in 17 Libra indicates that we are not far away from her transition here now. Now we follow with the instruction where DK said to her, I ask you not to work as does Alice Bailey, who chooses with deliberation to work in our suicide bank in brackets. And as he said, when he said, as it has been laughingly called by one of Moraya's group of disciples, but I would ask you to cease from the glamour of inferiority and preoccupation with details which keep you always devitalized. Enter into the joy and strength of non-frustrated service I will know better what to say to you when I note what conclusions you come to in this connection prior to May. Now this was the last words by DK in the first instruction from January to August 1940. Okay. Now we bring the NATO chart to look at some of these energies which he's bringing focus on. Because he is bringing the issue of her etheric devitalization here to our attention, which it was the first thing he actually mentioned in the very first instruction to her in November 1931. And we have discussed this issue of her devitalization in some detail already at the time. Here, DK is giving two causes for her devitalization. The glamour of inferiority, which blocks the flow of energies, you see, of the vital air or prana, and involves the etheric body and the spleen, obviously. Now, Sun and Earth are related to prana and the sun. The vital energy of the prana coming from the sun. And the spleen is ruled by the earth. And so the etheric body is obviously involved, and the spleen. And the etheric body, basically the etheric field, is conditioned primarily by Uranus and the signs of Gemini, Leo, and Aquarius. Okay? And the prana, the second house, I already mentioned, you know, it's another area which is usually considered in relation to the etheric energies and prana primarily. Now, Leo leads us to the fifth house, which is usually the area, you know, the Leo Aquarius energies through the fifth 11 axes, okay, where it's also the sun, you know, which is the ruler of Leo, the sign which I mentioned, one of the sign, Leo Aquarius, etheric energies, okay. Now, the sun is in Aquarian house, and it's in Gemini decanate. Gemini decanate of Sagittarian. Gemini Sagittarian decanates of Libra Aries. Okay? Where this polarity of the earth and sun is. Okay? This is what, not to confuse you, that we have a sun placement in Sagittarian decade of Aries, okay? But of the Libra Aries polarity of the Sun Earth, where Sun rules the Leo and making a trine aspect to Uranus in Leo in the second house, okay? So that Uranus is powerfully placed there in relation to the pranic field and etheric field. Through placement in that second house and its trine to the Sun, which is the dispositor of that Uranus in Leo, being the ruler of Leo, okay? Now, the natal Chiron Sun conjunction which we already mentioned, bring the wound to her confidence, okay? Her self-worth, identity, and is behind an inadequate integration, really, of her personality and of her inferiority complex, and the weakness in the etheric body and lack of vitality. So you see how important that conjunction Chiron-Sun. So many areas, you know, or of the lower energies behind that conjunction. Okay. And during the first 7 months of 1940, this conjunction was activated by the transiting Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Chiron, and Neptune as a major energies related to that devitalization and inferiority complex. Okay. Now we will bring on the screen the quadra-wheel for 11 June 1940. Okay, where it's a focal point this day, 11 of June, of a number of energies which are coming together. Okay, and the first one is the transiting Saturn in a 10 Taurus 08, and make opposition to the progressed Mars Saturn midpoint. Exactly, I was looking for it and I found it because of that Saturn transit. I was surprised actually myself, because it's found exactly in the same degree, 10 degrees Scorpio 08, okay, where the transiting Saturn in 10 Taurus 08 make exact opposition to it, okay? And this is a very powerful combination of Saturn, Mars, Saturn, of what I call the ending, in looking at this combination again from the perspective of ending of life and death. Okay? The progressed Neptune is found at 4 degree Taurus 31. You see the progress in making exact sextile to the natal Saturn in 4 degree Pisces 31. And this aspect, again, bringing together the Saturn and Neptune energies, was in operation from 19 February to 28 September 1940. Very long time. You see, that's how powerful this energy was influencing her, repeating itself through this year until her death. The transit in Mars is found in 15 Cancer 54. And you see it activates exactly by aspect to the natal Uranus at 15 Leo 54 in exact degree by semi-sextile. Together with the midpoint of Mars Neptune carried by the natal Uranus. So we have here Mars Neptune Uranus, a combination, you see. Again, energies coming together which already were present and working, okay? But they are repeating because they are continuously emphasizing her process here, okay? Now, transiting transiting Uranus is found at 23 Taurus. I am rounding up the degrees. Conjunct the progress Pluto at 23 Taurus. And together with transiting Neptune, you see at 23 degree Virgo in the 4th house, they activate the progressed Sun in 23 degree Gemini in the 12th house. Okay? Linking the 12th and 4th houses. Okay? The primary houses which are involved through this process she's going towards the death. So we note again the emphasis on the same triangle, Mars, Saturn, Neptune, which was present at the lunar eclipse in March as the strongest emphasis, now again. And the struggle for release from this suffering, which is indicated by the Uranus-Pluto energies which are involved. Through that transiting Uranus over the progress Pluto there, okay? Now these energies also indicate a possible surgical operation or stay in the hospital involving the 12th house of hospital, seclusion, isolation, okay? And Mars Pluto, you know, it's bringing that first ray with its energy of Scorpio being also involved here. And this Saturn, this Uranus Pluto conjunction is in opposition to the progress Jupiter in 23 Scorpio, you see, which, you know, to find first some kind of positive combination, which this is. Jupiter, Uranus, Pluto is a very positive combination of forces, which to me it indicates a possible improvement, but even though it was of very temporary nature, okay? But some kind of relief it brought, particularly if she was already in hospital and they have done something to relieve her pain, okay? Now, this concludes the discussion on the first instruction from January to August 1940. And now we're going to look at the relatively short instruction given in August 1940, where DK says, I have for you the briefest message, my brother. You are today in a condition of physical distress, and you at the same time are emerging out of a life crisis into greater surety, light, knowledge, and usefulness. Now, in the last webinar for 1939 instruction, we discussed the 7 years cycle of crises between the year 56 and 63, when CDP has reached the peak of this cycle in April, her birthday, 1939, when she was 63 years old. And we are told, you know, that 63rd year is in the life of all disciples, day of crisis. And according to that crisis will depend the future usefulness of the person. whether the soul continues to use the instrument through which it manifested upon the physical plane on into the old age, or whether it starts to gradually withdraw. Okay? Now, in the case of C.D.P., there were indications that her soul started to withdraw from incarnation in 1939. And we discussed that, so go back to that previous webinar, you know, to listen to it. And now DK is telling her that she's emerging out of this crisis, okay? She's emerging. And she's emerging into the light on the other side of life, where she will continue to serve and work in his ashram, okay? He's telling her that she is in physical distress, but at the same time, she's emerging of this life crisis where she was involved with in the light on the other side, or as he told her in the January 1939 instruction, where he already knew she was in the process of transition, when he said, you know, she will be entering the clear, cold light, okay? Which is usually more a technical expression of the light on the other side. When we are making the transition from the physical body, physical plane, okay, to the inner light. And now we will look at the quadra-wheel for 7 August 1940. Where the condition of weakness, suffering, and distress is indicated by the major combination of energies. For this sort of energies is a Moon-Saturn conjunction by progression in Pisces. That's where it is. Now, this really truly is the major combination when it comes together by progression. You know, it's reflecting his words, you know, that he's finding her in a suffering and distress, okay? Now, the transiting Saturn is found conjuncting the transiting Jupiter there in Taurus in 14 degree Taurus, and Jupiter is the ruler of Pisces, okay? And both these transiting planets, Jupiter, Saturn, and Saturn, by the way, is ruling her 8th house of death, okay? They are both making trine to the solar arc moon in 14 Capricorn, okay? Which is actually approaching also the 8th house entry there, because it's already in the energy of the 8th house, being, you know, in Capricorn. So we have the combination here of the energies of Capricorn 8th house and the Piscean energy of that Moon-Saturn conjunction reflecting the 12th house of Pisces, okay? Now the transiting Neptune in 23 Virgo through the 4th house, you see how these 3 houses are being emphasized, okay? 4, 8, 12 houses, okay? It's trying the progress Pluto in 23 Taurus. And they are the rulers of Pisces, Neptune, Pluto, right? And both activate, you know, this we already seen before. Somewhere I remember mentioning it in the 23 Gemini, okay, in the 12th house. It's just question of the exactness of this, which I started to, you know, leaving the minutes out for the clarity of it. The progress Neptune is still continuing its exact sextile to the natal Saturn, okay, in the same degrees, and the solar arc Neptune in the 12th house is approaching the conjunction to the natal ascendant from the 12th house, okay, and it's making trine to the natal Saturn. Okay, again, Saturn and Neptune energies. Now, solar arc Jupiter is found in 3° Aquarius, in the 8th house, and it's activating Saturn-Neptune midpoint, which falls in 3° Libra. You remember it was activated there by one of the eclipses, which we looked at before, okay? And this is linking the 4-8 houses together, okay? And the Aquarian energy being involved, you know, in its polarity with the 2nd house, it's related to the vitality procedures there, the vitalization, okay? You must remember that we are not going into all the energies involved, because it would take hours. So what I'm doing, I am bringing up the focal points, focal energies combination, which are being repeated and representing the process. She was going through very difficult process, okay, as the death was approaching. The transit in Chiron is in 25 Cancer. You see, is in that 2nd house of the pranic energy, okay, and it's square its own natal position in 25 Aries, natally, Chiron, okay, its own natal position. Now, this is a major aspect, you know, when a planet makes aspect to its own placement, okay? And so that emerges also the Chiron process, you know, which is the wound and the healer at the same time. It's the guide also. It has its lower and higher energetic expression, okay? And the solar arc Chiron in 27 Gemini in the 12th house activates the progressed Sun-Uranus midpoint in 27 Scorpio. Again, I remind you that these midpoints, I am looking for it. I need to find them and calculate them, because I know that these other important planets are coming to them by the transit or progressions, okay? So we have here the Chiron, Saturn, Uranus combination. And this point, midpoint, Saturn, Uranus, you know, we have the rulers of Libra here activated by Chiron. Because Uranus is the esoteric ruler of Libra, and Saturn has its exaltation there, but also it's the monadic ruler, which in this case I'm not utilizing. I am only indicating the exaltation of that Saturn, which is even stronger sometimes than its hierarchical rulership, okay? And Libra is the sign of decision and a choice where the soul is deciding if it's going around the year 63, if it's going to stay or is going to leave the incarnation. So that's why another importance of the Libra, okay? And also Libra rules the inner point of peace, inner point of peace on the level of the soul, the point of the spiritual being, where she was guided by DK to stand there, and from there to make the transition to the other side, you know, under this high energy of the soul, to leave the mind quiet, not to do anything, just simply to be there in that peace, okay? And giving her certain mantras to repeat, which we will see later what he says to her. So what I was going to say, that this 25 Scorpio, where this Saturn-Uranus midpoint is found, is the transiting Uranus in 25 Taurus, you know, is activating this midpoint in 25 Scorpio by opposition, okay? So we have the Uranian energy emphasized in this triangle here. Saturn, Uranus, rulers of Libra, you know, midpoint, and the transiting Uranus adding its energy. This, I found, was the most important planet for this disciple through this process, from different level of its energetic presence and expression and activation, okay? Because as before, in 1939, when the withdrawal process started, it was the solar arc Uranus. And now, as we are coming to the day of Hades, it happened to be progressed Uranus in 17-degree Leo, which is going to activate this Mars-Saturn midpoint in 17 Libra, okay? Which was in a process from May 7, 1940 until her death in 5th of November 1940. Okay? Amazing. I find this absolutely amazing myself, really. So we have the emergence of two triangles here. Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, which defines the physical distress which he mentioned there, particularly through involvement of that Saturn-Neptune energy, and also simultaneously with this distress, there is emergence of the crisis, which, you know, any crises are ruled by Saturn, and there comes primarily the Saturn and Uranus, the emerging, releasing energy is adding to that process. So the other triangle, Mars, Saturn, Uranus, indicate the withdrawal from incarnation and death. Okay? Now, we come to the another chart for 29 August 1940, where we see the progressed mid-heaven, the Dharma, the highest point of the chart by progression, is found in 15 degree Taurus 54, in exact square to that natal Uranus in 15 Leo 54. You know, to find the angles arriving by progression in exact aspects, you know, it's not, you know, an easy thing to see. And this is indicating a sudden emergence of weakness here, okay? Mars, Neptune are the sixth ray, glamours, and, you know, in illness, they usually, you know, it's lowering weakness of energy, okay? Weakness through lack of energy, which is caused by illness, okay? Because the Mars-Neptune midpoint carried by the natal Uranus in Leo, you know, bringing these Mars-Neptune energies together with that Uranus, okay? Now, solar arc Neptune you see, it has moved now in the first house, in 4 degree Cancer 26, and within 1 minute it's making, you know, exact conjunction to the ascendant or the first house of the physical body, okay? Because Neptune is ruling her physical body through the 6th ray also, okay? And so is Cancer. It's Cancer energy on the first house. First house is usually, you know, dealing with personality from one level and the physical body. Now, the presence of that solar Neptune in that close contact with the first house degree, in the first house now, you see, I had the impression it brings confusion here. It brings the weakness, you know, with its energy there on the and the physical distress ray, and weakness in the physical constitution. Okay, the whole personality is you know, also ruled by the 6th ray, Neptune here, and in that placement. So this is really, you know, what I feel it is indicated here, that Neptune in that area. Okay, transiting Pluto is found in 3 degree Leo 25. It's going through the 2nd house of, you know, of the vital energies there, and it's in opposition to the solar arc Jupiter in 3 degree Aquarius in that 8th house. You know, we already look at that Jupiter, but now the transiting Pluto came into it, you know, activating it from the 2nd to the 8th house. Okay. So it is from one point, the Jupiter Pluto usually is can be very positive combination of energy, but here it is, you know, it is exaggerating, you know, the process of that the vitalized energy there, the weakness. Okay. Because Pluto is also the ruler of the sixth house of health, which is under Scorpio energy, okay? And Jupiter is placed in the 8th house. So the 8th house and Scorpio energy is emphasized here because we are interpreting the energies from from the level of energies which he was experiencing through approaching the death process, okay? You see the Pluto as a non-sacred planet is the ruler of the 8th house of death, which is the house of the personality, and so is the first house, the house of personality, and so is the 4th house, okay? Because when we're dying, the soul is leaving the form behind, okay? The form is going and the life is emerging, you know, to another dimension of livingness. So the Leo Aquarius indicates the how would I say, indicate the contributory factor behind her illness, okay? And now, there is a very important combination of energies here. When we look at the transiting mass, Sun and Earth, all in the same degree, taking obviously also the Earth opposite the Sun, okay? In the 6th degree Virgo Pisces polarity, okay? It activates the natal Sun-Earth polarity in 21 Aries Libra, okay? Natally. Rulers of spleen, you see, Sun, Earth, and relation to their vitality and weakness. And they are activating the solar arc Mars in 6 Taurus. Involving the Saturn to the 8th house rulership of Capricorn, okay? And being in Taurus, linking it to the 2nd house of the vital energy. And also the solar arc ascendant in 6th Virgo, okay? Where that transit is going over. And these energies, when activating either the solar arc ascendant, and most importantly, when the progressed ascendant is affected, is arresting the spiritual progress on the path. Because the progressed Sun, you see, it's in 22 degree Leo 23, in exact square to the natal Pluto in 22 Taurus 23. And Saturn here is severing the process, you know, Pluto energy, okay? This is a major aspect between the progressed ascendant with that Pluto, okay? Transforming her life circumstances, which she was existing at the time, which were very difficult one, as you can imagine, with all these energies which we are seeing here, you know, during these 3 months as we approach the death. Now we will bring the chart for 21st September 1940. Because you see, when I was watching these energies, I have found certain focal point in a particular days and month where these energies were either further emphasized or some new ones were adding to it. So here we have the solar arc Saturn, which we just looked at before. It has moved now to 6 Taurus 44, and it is activating a Mercury-Saturn midpoint in 21 Virgo 44 placed in the 4th house. You see, I was looking again for that Mars-Saturn, Mercury-Saturn midpoint, because, you know, it is involving the mental energy primarily here, where when he was telling her, you know, stop using the mind, okay? Be quiet, just simply be in that high energy, okay? So this is a combination of energies, and particularly falling in the 4th house of ending also, and Saturn, you know, trying to stabilize something, and it's the Mars, is the mind, because both Mercury and Saturn rule the mind, okay? And Mercury and Saturn are the rulers of the 4th and 8th houses, okay? Which are implicated in this. Where we see the cusp of the 4th house, it's in Capricorn, decade of Virgo. So we have the Mercury-Saturn energy coming together there. And the cusp of the 8th house is in Virgo decade of Capricorn. Amazing, isn't it? So you see, one needs to find these energies coming together through a number of different directions. So during this time, the progressed Uranus in 17 Leo, you see exactly in that degree there, is still in that sextile to that natal Mars Saturn midpoint in 17 Libra, okay, in that 4th house. I mentioned that, you know, how long this aspect lasted, okay, because the progressed Uranus, it's never moving fast, because it's a slow moving progression planet. It's not like the Moon or Mercury, which is moving quite fast, okay? So the process for her was longer because of this slow moving progressed Uranus, okay? We also note that the progressed Neptune, the esoteric ruler of that Virgo 4th house, is still in the exact aspect to that natal Saturn in 4 Pisces, you know, 31 exact, where Neptune is also ruler of Pisces, a special high ruler of Pisces. And so this brings in the energy of Pisces again, and Pisces, its indication closing cycle, okay? Closing cycle. Something is coming to the end, okay? And usually Jupiter is involved as the ruler of Pisces also in this process, okay? And now we come to the words of Master DK, coming close to his final words here. And this is what he says: you have naught to do now, but relinquish all anxiety and rest back upon those realities which life has convinced you exist. Of certain things you are unalterably sure, of love, courage, and the soul. Use not the mind just now, but simply be, and let the love of all who know you, which, my brother, includes mine, flow through you. Permit the courage of your soul to strengthen you. This courage is not a fighting courage or any sort of struggle to be what is called brave, in brackets. It is the courage of sure knowledge, held steadily and unquestioning in the midst of difficulty and discomfort. You see, these are the words reflecting of those energies which we were just looking at. And he says, one thought only I will give you to repeat whenever you are discouraged, tired, or weak. And here is that little mantra of love, which he wants her to repeat. At the center of all love I stand, and naught can touch me here. And from that center I shall go forth to love and serve, obviously on the other side. Now, courage was the most important keynote in her development formula, standing for the letter C, C.D.P, okay? She needed to develop and use the true and sure knowledge of the soul. And now to hold steadily to this knowledge and love, and simply stand in spiritual being and let the love of all who knows her, including Master DK, to flow through her. He is preparing her for the transition by stabilization of her consciousness in the soul. And from that inner point of peace to make that transition by utilization of the energy of that soul. And you know, as I mentioned before, this inner point is ruled by Libra. And it's esoteric ruler Uranus, which is so important, okay, in relation to that Libra. Now we're going to look at solar eclipse in 1st of October 1940, which happened in 8-degree Libra, 10 minutes, in the 4th house. You see the emphasis of these houses? And it activates the progressed Saturn in 8 Pisces 04, the ruler of the 8th house. You see, linking the 4 and 8 houses. That's solar eclipse, okay? And the eclipse also forms opposition to natal Mercury in 8 Aries 45. Okay, I mean the angles of that solar eclipse. I'm looking at the Libra energy of the solar eclipse in opposition to the natal Mercury in 8 Aries 45. And you know, Mercury is the ruler of the 4th house, where the eclipse is falling, in the 4th house. And Mercury is also ruler of Gemini, which is intersected in the 12th house, linking the 4th house with the 12th house. The progress Neptune, it has moved 1 minute further, 4 degree Taurus 32, but it's still in aspect to that Saturn in 431 Pisces. Okay? Transiting Mars is going through the 4th house there, you see. And it's the ruler of Scorpio's 6th house of health, obviously. Which, you know, it's a very important house here. And being in the 12th house, naturally, the Mars, it's emphasizing the 6-12 polarity from the health perspective primarily. It's the health and healing issues from the level we're looking at it. There are a number of other interpretations of that polarity, like everything else, okay? Now, it is found in the degree that Mars of 27-22 Virgo, okay? And it is making an exact semi-square to the natal moon in 12 Scorpio 22, okay? The very important moon for this disciple with its placement of Scorpio Pisces energies, okay? And her natal moon is veiling Neptune for her. You know, we always have 3 planets which the moon can veil, and we need to find out which one of these planets primarily can be in that particular life, or they can be all activated through that life. It's a very individual process. The transiting Saturn in 13 Taurus 43 is activating the IC-MC axis in 13 Virgo Pisces 45. And the natal is also activating the natal nodal axis in 28 Virgo Pisces 57. And this indicates, with that Saturn involvement and a major nodal and angle, IC-MC, it indicates a karmic conclusion of life circumstances. Okay? Because it emphasizes the 4th house primarily, where that karmic conclusion is happening. Okay? Now one could go so much further with this, but we have no time for that. But I'm sure you will all look through this in your own time, because there's so much here, you know, to digest. So we note here the activation, again, same triangle appearing, Mars, Saturn, Neptune, and the 4, 8, 12 houses. Okay? And the Sun Chiron conjunction involving the natal Earth in Libra was, you know, activated by the also by the lunar eclipse on 16 October, the last eclipse falling in 1940, 20 days prior to her death, which we're going to look at this eclipse now. Lunar eclipse on 16 October 1940, okay? because it is falling in 22 Aries, 49, right on this natal Sun Chiron conjunction in Aries, okay, in the 11th house, and is bringing a focus on the devitalization, okay, but also on all the other things like the inferiority complex, okay, and the devitalization through the 5-11 polarity of that eclipse, reflecting the Leo Aquarius energies related to etheric body and vitality, okay? The transiting Jupiter-Saturn conjunction, which we looked at it before, but you know it's going back and forwards by retrogression, now is found in 12 Taurus, in opposition to the natal moon in 12 Scorpio, okay, in the 5th house. And it's making sextile to the progressed moon in 12 Pisces. You see where was the conjunction with Saturn moon? That's now, you know, the moon is moving obviously faster. So this aspect is, you know, activating that progress moon in 12 Pisces, and also the progress Mars in 12 Cancer in the 1st house. You see these powerful linking energies on the day of this eclipse and the time of that eclipse are brought together in such a close combination, okay? And the progress Mars, you see, which I mentioned before, but we didn't see it in there, but now we see in the 1st house, ruler of the 1st body in by progression is there now, okay? Strong activation of the Aries energy and of the Libra, of the Gemini energy by progression and by transit of the Aries there, okay? Through the eclipse, okay? So many confirmation. It is only this way when we realize that the same energy is repeating, we know it's becoming very important and we should focus when we're looking in the chart, okay? Because when it happens only one aspect to something and that's it, nothing else, it is not so vitally important energy. But when it is start to repeat by other energies activating it or itself in different contexts, then we need to take a note of that, okay? Because now the Mars, which we're looking at, is dispositor of the Scorpio moon in that 5th house. So it makes automatic relation to that 5th house, okay? And it's also ruler of the Aries 11th house where the eclipse, you know, has its polarity. So it's important. And we've seen it so many times being involved, okay? So strong involvement of Moon and Mars, also representing the lunar lords. The lunar lords. Okay, lunar lords, Sagittarius on the 6th house. Okay, energy, which is, you know, the lunar lords here are suffering. They are suffering for her. It means the lunar laws of the physical, you know, primarily physical body here, okay? And it indicates to me that this lunar eclipse on the sun, Chiron, also indicates a loose connection between the physical and etheric bodies as one of the causes of the vitalization. And by this time, you know, October 1940, just 20 days prior to her death, she must have been very low in vitality, very weak, okay? Which this eclipse emphasizes, okay? The transiting Neptune in 26 Virgo 15 through the 4th house is a square the progressed Mercury in 26 Gemini 17, very close square between these two planets, where Mercury is in the 12th house and the transiting Neptune is in the 4th house. And you know, they are the rulers of the 4th and 12th houses, implicated at the time of death. There is a double emphasis through this contact, through this square. And the signs of Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces also reflect the 4, 8, 12 houses of withdrawals, endings, and the vitalization as one of the causes behind her early death. Because, you know, she was not so old. She was 64 when she died. Okay, so that is not so old. Now we will put up the natal chart. The natal chart. We know she loved and cared for her children very much. She didn't have any job or a career, but made a motherhood her career, as is indicated by the midheaven, the Dharma dedication, the status, the profession is in Cancer decade of Pisces. Cancer family, Cancer rising, moon in the 5th house of children. Okay. Her care of children continued also on the other side when she died. As the following decade's comment indicates, and reflects also the salvaging energy of Pisces. And this comment is found in DINA II, page 33, where DK says, CDP is working continuously with the children of the world, including those who died victims of the horrors of war, preserving inviolate her affiliation with my ashram, but working in a group composed of disciples upon all the race and whose personalities in their last incarnation were upon all the many nationalities. They are doing what they can and must be done to salvage Piscean energy, the consciousness of the children, and to preserve them from complete disintegration. So, the other point of interest here is that the moon, being placed in the Pisces decade of Scorpio, linking to the energy of Scorpio because she died in that energy in November the 5th. And thus utilizing this energy of Scorpio and Pisces in her work with children who died, Scorpio, the sign of death, and salvaging their consciousness, Pisces. This for me also would confirm the probability of her returning again with a sixth-ray personality provided by the sixth-ray Mars as ruler of Scorpio. Because the hold of the powerful sixth-ray force on her was not broken, and she would have to deal with it again in her next life, the question is, would it be only on the sixth-ray personality or in some other levels, okay, of the lower bodies? Now, on the inner side, she was working continuously with the living children, not only the children who died in the war, but the living children of the world, which the placement of the moon in the 5th house and her undaunted persistence and loving heart indicates, okay? Basically, she loved children, and she was very, very good with children. The only thing which was her life problem was that her own children she treated as the personalities, not as souls. She didn't see them as souls. And so she was blocking not only her process, but their own. Okay? Now, the salvaging energy of Pisces, as I said, indicated by Neptune, is veiled by the moon and by the natal conjunction of Neptune with the healing energy of Chiron. You see it there, right? Chiron-Neptune conjunction. Okay? And that I will repeat to you again that mantra, that when he says, one thought only I will give you to repeat, okay, when tired and weak, at the center of all love I stand, and naught can touch me here. And from that center I shall go forth to love and serve. These are the words DK uses. She had the capacity, telling her that she had the capacity to walk constantly in the light because she did not trust herself she was able to. This is the inferiority complex, okay? So he's sounding the note of encouragement and reassurance to her that as a soul she was strong in knowledge, in love. She loved all beings. And as a soul, there was nothing she could not handle, okay? To lift her confidence and something positive among all the strong energies of weakness which were pushing her down, okay? Now somebody put this final note under this last instruction, which says, 4 months later, this disciple went forth to love and serve on the inner side of life. Though out of the physical body, she is active in the Tibetan's ashram. Now, we don't know who has written this note. But you see, if we count, it's a process of counting here now. If we count from September, the 4 months after August, it will lead us to December. as being the month of her death. Now, there could be a mistake, or the person included August as a final month of instruction in these 4 months, and this would lead us to November. Okay? Now, I would only add one simple note here with the houses, which I should have emphasized more, that the 4th house is also the house of Ashram. Okay? And that's where, after her death, you know, she was working, in DK's ashram. Now, according to the ancestry records, her death occurred on the 5th November in 1940 in the city of Wilmington, state Delaware, where she also got married, and after marriage, she lived there. So the quadra-wheel, which we will look at later, is calculated to her natal birth chart, you know, because she was not born in Wilmington, she only died there. So we will use her natal chart of Kentucky and Louisville, as you see in here in the natal chart calculation. But on the day of her death, in the quadra-wheel, we are utilizing the same time as the time of her death chart, when she died in Wilmington, Delaware, and the time is 4 hours, 29 minutes, and 19 seconds in the morning. Okay? And I will share with you how did I arrive at this time, which is not 100% the time, I must tell you. But you will see how I arrived to it, and you have to make your own decision on this point. And maybe somebody someday will present a different time, if it is found, okay? Which must be known by her, only by her closest family, if they ever at that time recorded it, okay? Now we will put on the screen these 2 charts. The quadra-wheel, okay, on the left, from my side as I'm looking at it, is the quadra-wheel, which is calculated from her birth chart, as you see, the 4 Cancer rising 25. But on the day she died, as you see there, the time of the death chart, it's on the right, okay? Now, there would be necessary time differences between the state Delaware, where she died, and the state Kentucky, where she was born. But these would be only some minor minutes differences, particularly on the faster moving planets by transit such as Moon, which in the death chart is found in 25 Capricorn 22 in the 4th house, and in the quadra-wheel chart it is found in 25 Capricorn 54. So you see there is slight difference in minutes, and there it is found in the 8th house. So you see, amazing that that moon you know, it's activating these two houses in the same sign, but in the houses 4 and 8 again, okay? Now, as everything else, a Mars-Saturn combination could be interpreted from several perspectives or levels of its expression and manifestation. Now here, the Mars-Saturn midpoint, from the perspective of death, bring together the energies of Scorpio, the sign of death, and Capricorn, with its ruler Saturn, ruling the 8th house in the quadra-wheel, okay? And the 4th house, and in the 4th house in this chart, okay? As I already said, brings the karmic energies in a conclusion of the life. And in this case, it represents the point of death or ending process. I have, since I've been in astrology, which is, you know, coming close to 40 years, I have always used from the perspective of ending, of any ending, including death, Mars Saturn as a death point, okay? Now death is ruled by Pluto as ruler of the 8th house of personality, okay? Pluto as a non-sacred planet, when we looking from that perspective in that house, representing death, detachment, and dissolution. And we must remember, as DK is trying to direct to this, that death is brought about by the soul. When the call comes, it comes from the soul, the angel of death, which shoots the arrow of death. And that is why the astrological symbol of Pluto is the upward pointing arrow, okay? She was born with Mars-Pluto conjunction, the rulers of Scorpio, in the Capricorn decade of Taurus, natally, right? And this conjunction is linked to Saturn as ruler of the Capricorn decade, and by natal Mars-Saturn square, natally they are also in square, Mars-Saturn, okay? And so making also a link to this Mars-Saturn midpoint in 17 Libra, calculated exactly, okay? Now, a Mars-Pluto midpoint is found in 25 Taurus 56. And at the time of death, it was activated by the transiting moon. You see it there. In what degree is the transiting moon in the 8th house? Transiting Neptune, all in a very close degree to that midpoint, which is really 26 degrees, 25, 56 Taurus, 26. 26 moon transit Neptune, right? Uranus was close to it, 20, don't say exactly the degree. They are forming a grand trine, basically. Taurus, Capricorn, Virgo, okay? In the death chart, this grand trine is found through the 4, 8, and 12 houses. Moon in the 4th, Uranus in the 8th, and Neptune in the 12th. Now in the death chart, the conjunction of Uranus with Mars Pluto midpoint in Capricorn decade of Taurus is found in the 8th house. Okay? You would have to calculate these midpoints yourself to really make sure that you know this is it. Okay? And that's where they are. Through Saturn, this links the 8th house to death to the 4th house of endings and conclusion. And 4 and 8 houses are considered the houses of personality. Thus, the endings and deaths are related to the form of personality, which for me makes analogy to the death of the personality at the 3rd initiation, with the final conclusion of at 4th initiation, which is related to the 4th house. Now, as I said in the death chart, 4th house is ruled by Capricorn. Okay? And Moon, with the Moon in Capricorn placed in the 4th house. And in the quadra-wheel, I am just trying to bring these points. Some of them I already said, but I am emphasizing them again because of the importance of the relationship between these two different charts in different places, different countries. Okay? That I didn't mention to you, how did I arrive at this time of death? Because I simply said to myself, I am going to put 17-degree Libra rising in the death chart, because that is the death point. And when I put it there, I realized that this was the time, 4:29:19 a.m., to give this degree of Libra rising in Aquarian decade of Libra, where Uranus is exoteric and esoteric ruler. Okay? Now, what I would like to mention that in a quadra-wheel is a very important alignment of energies at the time of her death, at her day of and time of death, where the transiting Sun Earth in 12 Taurus Scorpio across the 5-11 houses activated the natal moon in 12 Scorpio, progressed moon in Pisces, and progressed Mars in 12 Cancer. Okay? Because it's a contributory and alignment, you know, of energies which we already discussed, but they are coming together, you know, at the day and months and time of her death. Okay? And what is interesting in here, as we always try to find out what is the esoteric ruler of any chart doing, in this case, in the death chart, Uranus, being the esoteric ruler of that Libra ascendant, is found in the 8th house and indicates also the state, because it's esoteric ruler, it's bringing to that 8th house a spiritual energy, soul energy. And it indicates and confirms the state of spiritual being or inner poise ruled by Libra, where DK was guiding her towards when, as I already mentioned, told her to simply be, okay, in that spiritual being, in that point. Now, in this chart, it could not be confirmed better than it is, for me at least, okay? To achieve that inner poise which faces all, that comes in the light of the eternal. And this is the first words, the same words which he used in the very first instruction to her when he talked about this inner poise, already then, okay, in 1931. Now, in the death chart, the 8th house is ruled by Venus. It's ruled by Taurus, right? By Venus. And if we look in the quadra-wheel, the transiting Venus is found in 4 Cancer 25, you see there in exact aspect to the natal ascendant. Exact. Venus in that quadra-wheel is also ruler of the 12th house because it rules the Taurus and Gemini, ruling that 12th house. But in the death chart, it is found in the 12th house. You see there? And it makes aspect to Pluto, a ruler of a Scorpio, death. Okay, very important energy. So you see these energies are linking each from one chart to the other, emphasizing basically same houses, energies, but in different, how would I say, placements of emphasis. Okay. So there is involvement here also of the soul energy in the process of this. Okay. In the quadra-wheel, the solar arc Neptune in 4 Cancer, okay, near the natal ascendant, it has moved a little bit from where we've seen it before, but you know, the confusion energy is still there. I don't know to what her consciousness process was during these 3 months. Closer we come, actually we're looking at the death chart now. Was she conscious, and to what extent she was conscious? Okay, it is also a psychic and astral interference with that energy, and she was very familiar. She was very with this energy. She was very psychic. So this is a very important planet, and it's the esoteric ruler of her natal chart. Okay. And like it's a contributory energy which was present during the process of her death, of her final moments of death. Okay. I am reluctant repeating already things which I done before, but you know, the transit in Neptune through the fourth house, you know, in the quadra-wheel in Virgo, is the esoteric ruler also of the fourth house. You see that when I say esoteric, it's always a soul energy coming in through that planet, okay? And of the Cancer ascendant, also esoteric ruler, okay? And is forming square to the progressed Mercury, which is found in Gemini, 12th house. You see, at 26 Gemini. It's involving the ruler of the fourth house, but from the perspective of the personality and the form, okay? And Mercury in Gemini placement, it's also in exoteric placement. So you see the withdrawal from the form nature, leaving the form behind, okay? The soul is shifting out to the higher energies of its own plane. And obviously the 12th house, as I mentioned before, it's the area of seclusion and also of hospitals. Okay, we are not sure if she died at home, okay, or in one of the hospitals in Wilmington, the town she died, okay. We note that the proposed time of her death the transiting ascendant in the quadra-wheel is what degree? 21 Libra 09, opposition her sun. Are we seeing it there? Or is it we mixed it up with something else? Do we have this chart separate somewhere? Because this is what I have it in my, no. Strange. So we will leave it. I have mixed it up with some other chart here, what I was looking at. Because you see, we can take the transiting MCs and ascendants only, I think, for the place of birth, for the place of death, okay? Which in this case, we can't do it because we have only the death chart. We don't, the transits there are only the transiting planets inside of the chart of death. And the MC and ascendant are calculated angles by the time of death. Okay? So this is, so I've mixed up here on my part. Excuse me about that. Now, we note in the death chart the grand trine, right? Moon, Uranus, Neptune. We already look at that. But what I haven't told you yet, that I have calculated the Mars-Saturn midpoint in the death chart. Okay? Between the Mars and Saturn in the death chart. And this midpoint is found in 0 degree Leo 34 and is carried by the chiron at 1 degree Leo 27, and it's, you know, it's conjunct by Pluto, obviously there. But, you know, is the Chiron here is the highest elevated planet in the chart, representing the wise man and the guide to the other side, okay? And being in conjunction on that Mars-Saturn death point, okay? Which I found very, very interesting, that even in the death chart, there is this death point, you know, activated by the planet, which is so important in this process, the wound and the healer, the bridge maker, the guide, you know, which we discussed. Okay? So, in conclusion, I would say that this work was very revelatory for me, because I have learned through it so many new things, which I have never put this into practice before, but I have seen the indication of this and the opportunity of utilize this process, and I have taken it. Okay? So each of us looking at these things with a different eyes, with different understanding. And this one, which I presented to you in this final webinar, is my own present understanding. Thank you for your participation, and I hope it has been also to some degree new experience for you, which we all can learn.
Well, thank you very, very much, Elena, for the hard work and the wonderful insight that you've given us throughout this entire series. I know it's really opened up my eyes in a lot of ways. So thank you very much on behalf of everyone who's ever participated in your webinars live or come afterwards and watched them.
Thank you, BL. Without you, I could not have done it. So my great thank you to you also.
Well, thank you. And good night, everybody. Goodbye. We'll talk to you sometime later.